hi to Mr. Timothy. Woo, give me a clap, you guys. Woo! All right, sir.
Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Timothy, and I'm here at the Toledo Zoo in Ohio. And today we're going to be talking about some animals that like to live in the ocean. And we're going to be talking about how they work together as a team. Does anybody recognize any of the animals swimming behind me right now in our aquarium? Yeah, that's right. There are sharks in here. The one that's swimming right past my head, that's called a black-tip reef shark. And we've got some other sharks in here, like a zebra shark and an epaulet shark. Does anybody recognize any other type of fish swimming in this tank? You might recognize that small blue fish right there. So if you've ever seen the movies Finding Nemo or Finding Dory, that's called a blue tang, and it's the same type of fish from that movie. Now you can see a little bit better over here. We've got an entire tank, and this is actually a 90,000 gallon tank. So there are 90,000 gallons of salt water in here, and all of the fish are going to live here together peacefully. So they like to spend time with each other. Normally, they're just going to let each other swim past. But you might notice that some of the fish like to swim together in groups. I want to ask, does anybody know what a group of fish is called? If a bunch of fish are swimming together, do you know what that's called?
What's a group called, you guys? Ooh, I heard somebody say it. Did you hear it, Timothy?
Yeah, very good. That's right. A group of fish swimming together is called a school. Yeah, so we've got a couple of schools in here, and different fish will choose whether or not they like to swim together. So some fish like to swim together in a group, like our yellow-tailed fusiliers, but other fish are what we call solitary. Can everybody say solitary? So animals like our sharks are solitary because they like to be alone. Sometimes they might be close to another one, and they're not going to be angry at the other one, but they don't like to choose to swim together. They are really good being by themselves. So different fish will choose whether or not they want to be together. And usually, if animals are going to stick together, it's because that will help them. So these fish that like to swim together, they're going to be safer when they're swimming alongside each other. We're going to take a step over here and see a very famous schooling fish called a barred flagtail. And if you look at their tail, you can see it almost looks like a zebra stripes or like a racing flag, which is where they get the name. Now, these stripes are going to help them blend in with each other. And when they're scared that a predator might come to try to eat them, they'll swim all together in a big group, and that'll make it really hard for the predator to find one to eat. So they're going to stick together as a whole family. And when they're swimming in the same direction, we call that a school. But if they're swimming in different directions, but they're still staying with each other, we call that a shoal. So that's a little tricky, but I think if you call a group of fish a school, you'll probably be good to go. Now, does anybody have any questions about these fish?
What's their name again?
These are called barred flagtails. So that's BARRED space FLAG, like a flag that you wave, and then tail, TAIL.
Yep, very cool. Kids, do you have any questions about these fish?
Yeah.
No, you do, Emmett? What's your question?
Why do they swim all the time?
Why do they swim all the time is the question.
Oh, yeah. So the more that they move, the harder it is to tell them apart. So if they were all sitting still and a predator or something that wants to eat them came along, they would see a fish. But if they're moving, it's a lot harder to pick out just one. So that's going to keep them safe. You can see sometimes they'll stop for a moment, but usually when they're swimming, they're going to keep swimming because that'll help increase how hard it is to find just one to grab.
So how do they rest? What do they do when they're resting? Do they ever take a rest?
So they can lower how much activity they do, but most fish don't sleep in the same way that we sleep. Most fish actually don't really sleep at all, but they will take rests and they'll sort of slow down. They won't swim as fast, but they'll still swim a little bit. And some fish will they'll rest at the bottom of the water. Depending on where they are, that might mean they'll rest in the sand or maybe underneath some rocks. But they're not exactly going to like fall asleep and have a dream like we can.
Could you guys imagine running or walking all the time pretty much? You'd be tired, wouldn't you? We're just like, yeah, she's like, I can do it. Any other questions about these fish? No? All right.
All right. Well, there are a lot of animals that like to hang out with the same type of animals that like the company of their own species. But there are other animals that like to spend time with other animals. And we call that a symbiotic relationship. And right here, we've got a very famous example of a symbiotic relationship. Does anybody recognize one of the animals in here?
Who is it? No. What's the other one? Nemo. What kind of fish is it? Ooh, they knew it. He's clownfish.
Very good, very good. Yes, these are clownfish. They're a type of clownfish called orange clownfish, and they are a very cute, tiny fish. Now, they are not the only animal in here because the other thing in here is also an animal. This thing with all of the long, skinny tentacles. Does anybody know what that animal is called? That one's way trickier.
You think, Lane? Did you have a thought about what it might be? Okay, we heard plankton. Any other guesses or thoughts? Seaweed.
Those are
are
both good guesses, but seaweed is actually a type of plant. And I know this thing looks like a plant, right? It's kind of shaped like a plant, but this is actually an animal called a sea anemone. It's a bubble tip sea anemone. And so it's an animal just like the clownfish is. And they've got cells and a mouth. They don't have eyeballs like fish and people do, but they do have a mouth and they're able to breathe water, rather the oxygen that's in water, and they have to eat food to survive. Now, these sea anemones and these clownfish are best friends. They love to spend time together because they're going to really benefit. That means they're going to get something good from each other. Now, the sea anemone has all of these tentacles, and those tentacles are actually filled with stingers. So have you ever been stung by a bee?
Have you guys been stung by a bee? Who's been stung by a bee? I have.
Yeah.
The rest of you are very lucky.
So similar to how bees have stingers, these anemones have stingers too, but they have stingers all along their tentacles. So if I were to put my hand in there and I rubbed my hand through the tentacles, I would be stung thousands, if not millions of times because there's so many tiny little stingers on the tentacles. So they're very, very good at protecting themselves. Though you can see the clownfish are swimming right through and they are actually not being stung because they have a special coat of mucus on their body. So they secrete a special little coat of slimy material. It's kind of like a little slime that comes out of their body and it goes all over their scales so they can swim through the tentacles without being stung. So they are perfectly safe from any animals that would try to come and eat them because they can hide in the tentacles, and those animals that want to eat them know that it's not safe to go into the tentacles. So that way these clownfish are going to stay safe. That's how the clownfish benefit from the sea anemone. Now, the sea anemone also likes to have the clownfish around, and this is kind of gross, but it's also really, really cool. The reason the sea anemone likes to have the clownfish around is because the sea anemone will actually eat the waste of the clownfish. If you
Doesn't
don't
know
know
what that
what that means, basically that means when the clownfish has to go to the bathroom, the sea anemone will eat what comes out.
Oh,
Yeah, it is gross. It is gross,
ew.
but it's very good for the sea anemone. And it actually helps them grow to be big and strong. And that way they both like to be around each other because they both benefit. So when these two animals work together, they're going to live a lot longer than if they were working by themselves. Because the sea anemone will protect the clownfish, and the clownfish will feed the sea anemone. All right. Does anybody have any questions about our bubble top sea anemone and orange clownfish?
What question do we have?
What do they eat?
Do the clownfish eat? Is that what you're asking? What do the clownfish eat?
The clownfish are mostly going to be eating plankton, which I did hear somebody mention earlier. So plankton is a really broad term that means tiny little living things that are floating in the water. And if you look really closely, it might be a little hard to see on camera. But if you look
Yep.
really closely, you might be able to see little specks floating through the water. Those are
Yep.
plankton, and that's what they're going to eat. Sometimes they'll be really tiny plants. Sometimes they're very, very tiny animals. And sometimes they're different kinds of organisms. But that's what the clownfish are going to eat.
So they're helping filter the water essentially.
How do
Absolutely.
How do they get in there?
In where they are right now, or in the anemone? In the tank they're at, or in the anemone? Because the zoo placed them together. The tank, yeah, because the zoo placed them together. All those displays there's a whole crew of people, isn't there, that put those displays together and find all the fish. Is that
That's-
correct, Timothy?
That's right. Now, most of the animals that you're going to see in our aquarium were actually born in an aquarium. So we don't like to take animals out of the wild unless we have to. So we will rescue some animals from the wild, but most of the animals that you see in the aquarium were actually born either in this aquarium or at a different aquarium, and we're able to take care of them here. But we don't want to take animals out of the wild because if they're healthy and in the wild, then that's where they should be. But if they get hurt like some animals do and they need a safe place to live, then the zoo can be a great place for them to live.
So what I heard in all this is we could cover our bodies in slime and walk through a whole bunch of bees, and we'd be protected.
It would have to be thick slime, but that would work. Yep.
I was like, no, I'm not into this. No. Any other questions about the clownfish, you guys? Yeah.
Do they sleep?
Do they sleep? Oh, since they kind of have a
Yeah.
place.
They do. They will rest much more than the flagtails that we saw. So again, they're not going to like dream like we do, and they don't really have the ability to close their eyes. Their eyes are always going to be open, but they will take rests and they'll stop swimming and they'll actually sit with their buddy, the sea anemone, protecting them.
Yeah.
I know why they open their eyes, because they don't have eyelashes.
Oh, they don't have eyelashes. Is that true? They don't have eyelids or anything?
They don't have eyelids or eyelashes. That's right. Yeah. And no fish is going to have hair of any kind. Yeah. So there are some fish that look like they're hairy, but it's not actually hair like our hair is.
So is there any other fish that lives with sea anemones like that, or are the clownfish only exclusive to
So
that?
there are clownfish that there are lots of different species of clownfish. So sometimes when you see a clownfish, it might look different than this. There are other animals who will live near sea anemones for protection, but in terms of swimming through the tentacles like this, that's pretty much something that clownfish and the group of clownfish that we call anemone fish, that's pretty much their specialty.
Gotcha. Okay, I only have one other question. Do you guys want to know where the anemone's mouth is? Because I do. Where is the mouth located on the sea anemone?
That's a great question. It's actually right in the middle. So a sea anemone is kind of circular. And if we look up right here, oh, you can, it's kind of blocking it with its tentacles. Maybe it's a little shy, but you can see right in the middle there is a little blue circle, and that is what it uses to eat and to defecate. So that's its hole for everything.
So each little bunch is one sea anemone. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So there's you can see there's a lot of clownfish in here, and there's also a lot of sea anemones. And sea anemones like to live in a big group called a colony.
Ah. All right. Any other questions about the clownfish? I know I had a lot of myself. Any adults? You guys are free to ask too. Anybody? Greg, you got any questions? Good. All right. I think we're. Oh, Emmett. Yes, sir.
Where do they sleep?
Where do they what? Swim? Sleep? Remember he said that sometimes they'll kind of rest in the anemones. They stay inside of the anemone area so that they're protected so that the other fish don't get them.
Yeah, they very rarely are going to be more than a couple inches away from the anemone.
Yep. What's that?
Down at the bottom.
Yeah, like they'll just kind of go down to the bottom closer. The anemone's not going to eat them. They just remember. All right.
All right.
Good.
Well, we have one more really cool friendship to show you, but first, just so that we can sort of see what everybody knows about one of these organisms, could anybody tell me what type of animal we're looking at right here?
Ooh,
Jellyfish.
jellyfish. I know that.
Very good, jellyfish. And so jellyfish are actually distant cousins of sea anemones. So just like with sea anemones, if I were to rub my hand through those tentacles, I would be stung a whole bunch. Now, some fish will swim next to jellyfish, but there's another really cool type of jellyfish that we have over here called the Cassiopeia. And the Cassiopeia is actually right over here. And I'm going to see it. Excuse me, do you mind? Sorry, if real quick I could get to this tank right down here. Thank you so much. We've got a class. Thank you so much. So these are Cassiopeia jellyfish. And one thing that's really cool about them is that they swim upside down. So you can see they've got the bottom of their body is what we would normally think of as the top of other jellyfish. And you can see it's kind of bouncing almost like it's going to a beat, going in and out. Now, the reason that these jellyfish swim upside down is because they have their best friend living inside of their tentacles. They actually have a type of plant living inside of their body. So who here has a plant at their house? Does anybody have a house plant, or maybe they have some flowers outside their house?
Oh yeah, we got some hands going up.
Yeah. So we love plants too. We like to have plants. Sometimes we can eat plants. Sometimes plants are really pretty and they can make us happy. And there are other plants, of course, lots of plants. In fact, almost every plant is going to help give us oxygen to breathe. These plants, though, inside of this jellyfish are actually going to give the jellyfish energy. Plants take in sunlight and they turn that into energy. And that's how they're able to grow. But this jellyfish gets some of the energy too. And in return, the jellyfish is going to protect this small plant called algae from anybody that would want to eat it because it's covered in those stingers. So they've got plants living inside of their body. Can you imagine that? They've got a living thing inside their body that they're going to protect because they love the energy that they get from it. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the Cassiopeia jellyfish?
Cassiopeia, yes, Emmett. Where do they sleep? Well, do they ever move or do they stay completely where they are?
Yeah, if things are good, if there is nothing to be afraid of, then they are going to stay exactly where they are. They love to stay still. Now, sometimes there are some animals that can eat them, specifically sea turtles. And so if a sea turtle gets close to them, they will try to move away. But for the most part, as long as it's sunny where they are, for most of the day, then they're gonna stay where they are because they like to be still. That way the plants can get lots of sun.
Somehow I missed those when I was at the aquarium. I've never seen these before.
These
those
are,
crazy?
yeah, these are a new addition. We just added them this summer.
Wow, look at that, exclusive. Very cool. Does anybody have any questions about the Cassie thing? Gavin, did you have your hand up for a question? No? Have any questions about them? Meredith? No? Okay, just checking. Yes, Travis.
What do they eat?
What do they eat? Do they eat the algae that lives inside of them, or
No, they
are
don't eat the algae. It's if they get their energy, the energy actually transfers straight from the algae to the jellyfish. It's a little
So that-
hard to understand, but it's kind of like if you ever put a battery into something that needs a battery, it gives energy to that thing. And so the plant gives its energy directly to the jellyfish. They don't have to eat it.
They're solar powered.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
How do they, get more of them?
Oh, do they ever?
Yeah, so
run
they reproduce like other jellyfish do, and there's two ways. They can do it the way that other animals reproduce by mating with each other. But they can do it without mating, and they will actually sort of split themselves in half, and then each half will become a new adult eventually. So they can kind of cut themselves in half just by splitting down the middle.
Wow, that's fascinating. I need to go see these things. Does that make sense when I go to the zoo and the aquarium and see these things? Yeah, well, it's obvious. Did you see these? You did? Wow. Well, I gotta go. It's been too long.
Are they big? I mean, like.
Yeah,
are
from
they
our
the size of a
picture.
Hand or?
Oh yeah, it's about the size of the palm of an adult's hand. Yeah.
That's crazy. How tall are those tentacles roughly?
Well, right now they're kind of curled. I would guess if they were to stretch out, maybe about 4 inches. There are different species of Cassiopeia jellyfish. These ones are kind of like an average size. So there are some that are quite a bit bigger. There are also some that are smaller.
Okay. Yeah, because right now they look pretty large, I would think. Yeah. They look like, I would say, at least a foot tall. But so okay, that makes sense. They're a little bit smaller. So all right. Did anybody have any questions about our whole visit with the zoo today? Does anybody have any questions at all? Did you guys learn about better together type of relationships? Kind of perfect for our summer reading theme, wasn't it? Because there are better relationships that certain creatures have together. They're better together. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all your knowledge and presenting all that to us. Are you guys excited? Were you guys, what do you, we get clapped? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And if you want to be able to send that recorded link, I don't know how that works. If you to my email or whatever, that would be greatly appreciated. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
I'm shopping Sam behind you.
All right. There's something behind you. What's behind you? Is it just some seaweed?
Yeah, well, there's some kelp, and then we've also got
kelp.
a leopard shark.
Oh, the leopard shark. Oops. Sorry.
Yeah, thank
Whoa.
you so much, everybody. I hope maybe if you come to Toledo, you'll see our aquarium in person.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.